My name is Kevin Baster. I'm 22 years old, and I have unbelievable confidence. I am also a person who, in his entire life, has never been right about a single thing. I'm not a bad person. I pay my taxes. I hold doors open for people. Once, I even helped an old lady cross the street. Never mind that it was the wrong way. My intentions were good. What was my crime? It all started on a Tuesday. I'm a part-time delivery boy and a full-time overthinker. The sun was pouring through my windshield like liquid gold as I drove to deliver a birthday cake to a very important address. The cake was for Governor Patricia Orworth, a 5-layer, custom-designed, $4,000 masterpiece. On it was written, "Happy 60th birthday, Your Excellency." I delivered it, smiled proudly, got back in my car, the afternoon light bouncing off the hood. Then a phone call came. "Where is the governor's cake?" I froze. I checked the address I'd just left, 47 Maplewood Drive. The governor's mansion was 74 Maplewood Drive. I had handed the government-ordered $4,000 cake to Mr. Gerald Higgins, a retired accountant who had been sitting comfortably in his living room watching golf, dust motes dancing in the sunny room. Before anyone could call me, he had already eaten 2 slices. My real mistake began when the governor's security team arrived at Gerald's house. In a panic, I tried to snatch the cake back. What followed was 40 minutes of absolute chaos. I was like a madman, grabbing at leftover cake. Gerald's wife called the police. I accidentally stepped on a piece of cake, slipped, and fell off a porch, the bright blue sky spinning above me. Then the governor herself arrived. A flying piece of cake hit her right in the face. I was screaming. It was an accident. The cream is still perfectly fine. And finally, the entire enormous cake landed all over the governor's brand new white pantsuit, the sun catching every smear of frosting. The charges against me, Kevin Baxter, were severe. First, destruction of government property, meaning the cake. Second, assault on a government official, the cream incident. Third, unlawful entry because I had run into Gerald's backyard. And fourth, petty theft because I had put a piece of cake in my pocket as evidence. My lawyer looked at the list of charges, then at me and said, "I've seen worse cases, but not much worse." The judge sentenced me to 8 months in a nearby correctional facility. But what I didn't know, what my lawyer forgot to tell me, and what was missing from the paperwork was that Maplewood County Correctional had been converted into a women's prison just 3 months earlier. A small typing mistake on the transfer papers. My name, Kevin, was written as Kavina, and so, on a foggy Monday morning, I arrived in a transport van. Orange jumpsuit, a small bag with 3 books and a bag of chips. I had no idea what was waiting for me inside. The door opened, I stepped in, and the world turned bright. The entire yard was flooded with sunlight, so clean and vivid it felt like an anime opening. Green grass, white concrete, everything sharp and shimmering. 200 women were staring at me, their faces caught in that brilliant glow. I looked left, I looked right, I waved and said, "Hey ladies." Officer Brenda, as wide as a refrigerator, with a face that had seen every color of the world, looked at the transfer papers, then at me. The sun caught the badge on her chest. Then she let out the longest, most exhausted sigh of her career. "Put him in cell block D," she finally said, "and may God help us all." Cell block D was awash in soft morning light. The windows were high but wide, letting in rivers of gold that pooled on the linoleum floors. Total population, 1 very confused boy and 24 women who were absolutely not ready for this. My bunk was between 2 inmates. On the left, Rose. She had hacked a major bank system and changed everyone's account names to famous cats. 14-month sentence. Very sharp, very scary. She somehow had 47 pictures of cats inside prison. The light fell across her face like she was perpetually solving a beautiful puzzle. On the right, Diamond. She had driven a stolen golf cart through a shopping mall. No regrets, and she had very strong opinions about my hair. Her side of the cell seemed to glow with chaotic energy. I put my bag down, sat on my cot, and stared at the ceiling, where reflections of sunlight wobbled like water. Then the intercom crackled, a small burst of static. "Attention, Block D. We are aware of the situation. Everyone remain calm." Through the bars, Rose's cold, quiet voice floated over like a breeze through a sunlit window. "Hey, new fish. What crime got you in?" I took a long breath. "Cake." Silence. "It's a long story." From the right, Diamond let out such a loud laugh that she fell off her bed, her arms and legs flailing in a shaft of light. That was my first day. The next morning, at 6, I woke to the madhouse. But even the madness was drenched in light. Pale blue morning pouring through every window, making the bars look like musical staffs. I hadn't slept all night, not just because the bed was terrible, though it was like sleeping on a thick math textbook, but because between midnight and 5 a.m., about 17 different women had passed by my cell just to stare at me like I was a new zoo animal, their silhouettes haloed by the corridor lights. One whispered, "He's actually real," and walked away. Another took my photo with a smuggled phone, the flash bouncing off the white walls. I pulled my blanket over my face and prayed for morning. Morning came. Things things got worse. The 6 a.m. alarm screamed like a terrifying witch. I jolted awake, hit my head on the top bunk, fell off the cot, and landed face down on the cold, hard floor. Through the window, the first rays of sun touched my fingertips. "Good morning, Cake Boy," came Diamond's voice, bright as a trumpet. From the other side, Rose said nothing. She just sat cross-legged on her bed, staring into my cell like a scientist observing a new life form, the sunlight drawing a line across her cheek. "Do you sleep on the floor?" she asked flatly. I was still on the floor. "I fell," I yelled. At breakfast, Officer Brenda lined us up and walked us to the cafeteria. The corridors were rivers of light, clean, almost holy. I walked in the middle of that line like a penguin trapped among swans. The moment we entered the big hall, the entire room went zero. Forks stopped in midair. Someone dropped a tray. The windows were enormous, letting in a morning so golden it seemed fake, like a filter over reality. I picked up a tray, looked straight ahead, and told myself, just get food and sit down quietly. No drama. I took 4 steps. A wave of whispers spread across the cafeteria. "Is that a boy? What's a boy doing here?" I reached the food counter. Linda, the worker, smiled at me like I had made her whole life successful. Behind her, the kitchen gleamed with steam and sunshine. "Hey honey, what can I get you?" "Whatever's good," I said quietly. Linda piled 3 times more food onto my tray than anyone else. "That's too much," I said. "You look too weak," she said firmly, and added another bread roll. I took my tray and looked for a place to disappear. First, the ones who hated me. Veronica Cross. Everyone called her V, underground racing leader. She always looked like she had just smelled something very bad. Since I arrived, she definitely had. But the way the light hit her profile, sharp, clean, like a blade, made her impossible to ignore. Z Park, tax fraud. She didn't hate me with emotions. She hated me with logic. Every 90 seconds, she stared at me and wrote something in her diary, the sun catching the silver spiral binding. Tammy Boom Washington blew up her ex-boyfriend's car. She had a problem with me waving. She thought my waves were part of a huge conspiracy. Her skin glowed in the warm light, but her eyes were storm clouds. Natasha Gray. Identity theft. She spoke in a very calm, grammatically perfect voice that sounded exactly like a threat. She smiled at me in the cafeteria. It was the most terrifying smile of my life, made worse by how beautifully the light played on her hair. Then, the ones who liked me. Diamond, who annoyed me like a little sister. She had saved me a seat right in the middle, right in a patch of sunshine. "Sit with us, Cake Boy." "Please stop calling me that," I whispered. Priya Sharma, whose samosas had once caught fire. She always wanted to feed me. "Are you eating properly?" she asked, sliding a bowl toward me, the steam rising into a sunbeam. Casey Brooks, who just ate her food in peace and slid some of it toward me without a word, her face calm in the bright room. And finally, the one who loved me whether I wanted it or not, Luna Waltz. She lived in her own world, day and night. She had written me a poem, "The Boy Who Came with Cake." I quietly put it in my pocket because I had no idea what else to do with it. The paper was warm from her hands. And Roxy Delka, who treated everything like a competition. From across the cafeteria, she showed me her biceps, pointed at me, and gave 2 thumbs up, the muscles in her arms catching the light like polished stone. "Is she showing me her biceps?" I asked Diamond. "She likes you," Diamond said. "That's terrifying," I said. Later that morning, I was finishing my breakfast when Veronica Cross stood by my table. The sun was directly behind her, giving her an almost ethereal outline. "You're sitting in my seat," she said. I looked at my seat, then at the 12 completely empty chairs around it, all gleaming in the clean light. "That's my seat," she growled. I quietly picked up my tray and moved 1 chair over. "Was that really her seat?" I whispered to Diamond. "She's never eaten at this table in 8 months," Diamond said, "just showing dominance." I held my head and said to the air, "I want to go home." Priya immediately slid another granola bar toward me, the wrapper crinkling like a tiny firework. That night, lights out, but the moonlight came through the high windows, soft and silver, turning the cell block into something almost beautiful. I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling. What had I survived today? I was evicted from an empty chair. Poem was written about me. Someone showed me her muscles in the name of romance. I didn't get to shower for 26 minutes because Roxy was doing pull UPS in the shower, her silhouette moving against the frosted glass. I was given enough food to feed a small village. Z Park had stared at me exactly 34 times, and I now had a name, Cake Boy, spreading through the whole prison like sunlight spreading across a floor. Then Rose's quiet voice came through the dark. "Tomorrow is the 2nd day. The first time is always the hardest. Good luck." I pulled my blanket up to my mouth. "What do you mean, the first time?" "The whole prison comes out at once." "How many people?" "Almost 200. I closed my eyes. "Great." From the right, Diamond said, "Hey, Cake Boy. Roxy said she really likes your shoulders. You have to say thank you. Also, don't ever tell her anything like that again." "I'll tell her you like her shoulders too." She started pretending to sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, where moonlight painted painted soft shapes. Cake, I whispered to myself. I'm here because of a cake. And somewhere in the dark, at the end of the block, Veronica Cross was wide awake, a sliver of moonlight across her face. A few days later, Officer Brenda gave me my assignment, laundry duty. With Veronica, I stood outside Brenda's office for a full minute, waiting for her to laugh or say something. The hallway was bright, almost cheerful, with clean white walls and a window at the end that framed a perfect square of blue sky. She just drank her coffee and stared at her clipboard like she hadn't just given me a prison inside the prison. Any problem? She asked without looking up. I thought about Veronica's face, her tied-back hair, that chair she never sat in, her way of saying think slower, as if silence were a skill I needed to practice. No problem, I said. I walked to the laundry room alone, reassuring myself, just don't do anything weird, Kevin. Just fold clothes. No one has ever started a fight over folding clothes. The corridor opened into a wide space flooded with natural light. The laundry room had skylights, actual skylights. Sun poured down like a waterfall, making every surface gleam. I opened the door and stopped. Honestly, I hadn't expected this. Color-coded bins on every wall, alphabetical labels for each block, a schedule board with time slots, a laminated chart showing the correct way to fold clothes. Right in the center of a prison laundry room, someone's masterpiece, all of it shimmering in the clear, bright air. Don't touch anything, Veronica said from behind. I wasn't going to. You were thinking about touching. I looked around the room again. Did you build all this? The system runs itself now. I just maintain it. I turned to her. Veronica, you've built an entire supply chain in a prison laundry room. She didn't answer, just loaded her cart with fierce concentration. The energy of someone who heard everything but had decided to show no emotion. The light made her hair look almost incandescent. This is really amazing, I said. You should be running a company. For full seconds of silence. The system is efficient, she said. I'll explain it once. Pay attention, she explained. I paid attention. Honestly, it wasn't hard. The whole system was very logical, built by someone who thought 3 steps ahead of every problem. I asked 2 questions. Without looking at me, she answered both. I began to understand. Speaking without looking was her way of being civil. We worked in silence for 20 minutes, the sunlight shifting across the floor like a slow clock. I was waiting to make a mistake so she could enjoy correcting me. I think she was waiting for that too, but the system was so clean that following it was almost automatic. While working, without turning, she said, "You've done laundry before. Been living alone since 18. Either you learn or you wear stiff, rough clothes." More silence. Then, and I remember this very precisely, the left corner of her mouth moved upward, maybe half a second. Then it stopped, returned to its place, set back to its usual controlled neutrality. She turned and started aggressively sorting something. I looked back at my clothes. I was smiling at a shirt. I need to control myself. Later that morning, I finished my laundry shift and walked out the side door into the yard. The sun made me squint, and I understood the scene. The yard was a postcard of brightness. Green grass, white picnic tables, blue sky, everything crisp and vivid like a freshly painted anime background. Sheila from Block C. Huge, loud, a woman whose whole existence was built to scare people. She was standing over Luna, who was sitting against the wall with her napkins and poems like always. But now Luna was trying to take something back from Sheila's hand. A napkin. Sheila was reading it out loud, mocking her. Some of her friends were laughing. Luna's face was crumpling. She was trying not to cry, but it was happening. I had seen that look before. It's a special kind of pain. When something you made, something from your heart, is turned into a joke in front of everyone. I don't think I decided to go over there. I just went. Sheila was a head taller than me and looked like she had won many fights. I noticed all of that. It didn't matter. I stopped beside her and held out my hand. "Can I have that back?" Sheila looked at me like I had spoken a foreign language. Then she laughed. "You're joking, right? You want this napkin? It's hers. And if I don't give it back?" I looked at her for a moment. I think she was waiting for a threat, something she could fight back against. But I wasn't angry. I was just tired of the whole drama. "So you're the kind of person who takes poems from people smaller than you and reads them out loud so others can laugh," I said. I shrugged slightly. "That's a very sad and cheap way to live." The yard went silent. Several emotions crossed Sheila's face. I saw a flash of anger, and underneath it, something softer, almost like being caught red-handed. She dropped the napkin, looked at me for one more second, then walked away. I picked up the napkin and held it out to Luna. "I'm sorry about all this," I said, "because someone had to apologize." Luna took it. Her eyes were wet, and she was holding back her tears with great dignity. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," I said, because I really felt that I did. Then I went back inside to finish laundry. 2 more carts left. While folding someone's socks, it finally hit me. The whole yard had probably watched me do that, the sunlight still warm on my back. At lunch, the cafeteria was different today. Not loud different, just different, like the room temperature had changed slightly and you couldn't explain why. The sun was higher now, pouring through the windows like honey. 3 women I had never spoken to nodded at me as they passed. A real nod. Respect, not zoo animal staring. Maria from Block A gave me a thumbs up. Casey slid her corn over to my tray without a word. I've learned, with Casey you just take it quietly and say thank you. Behind the counter, Linda looked at me like she had adopted me. I heard what you did, baby, she said, and piled so much food on my tray it looked like a building, all of it glowing in the bright light. Linda, I can't eat all this. I was halfway through lunch when Roxy came over. I was ready for something about dumbbells or pull UPS, but she stood there for a second, looked somewhere over my left shoulder and said, very quietly by Roxy's standards, though still louder than normal people speak, "That was brave. What you did for Luna. That was really brave." Then she walked away quickly, as if she had done something deeply embarrassing. The sunlight caught the back of her neck. I sat there for a while. It hadn't felt brave to me. It had felt like the only way forward. But I was starting to think that bravery might not depend on how big something feels inside. Maybe it just depends on whether you do it or not. I looked across the cafeteria. Veronica was at her table. Our eyes met for maybe a second, the light shifting between us. She went back to her food. I did too. But just before I looked down, there was something on her face that I couldn't quite read. It wasn't hostility. It wasn't cold territory marking. It was something very quiet. I thought about that for far too long. During free hour, someone tapped on the bars of my cell. The corridor was bathed in late afternoon gold. Priya stood there with a small covered bowl. She looked like she had just run a marathon and committed a minor crime along the way. "Don't ask questions," she said, passing the bowl through the bars. I lifted the cloth. Here, rice pudding. In prison. Real cardamom and condensed milk. Made by a woman whose pockets I now understood to be a catering service. The pudding shimmered in the warm light. "Priya," I said. "How?" "Boom let me use the kitchen." I paused. "Boom let you?" She said, "Use the good condensed milk." I looked at the bowl, then at Priya, then at the bowl again. "It's for you," she said, looking at me like I had asked something very stupid. "Obviously. Eat it before it gets cold." And before I could say anything, she was gone, swallowed by the golden light of the corridor. I sat on my cot with a bowl of prison kheer, made with Boom's blessing, the last rays of sun warming my knees. I ate every spoonful. In the last 4 days, it was the best thing I had eaten. Maybe longer than that. A folded piece of paper slid under my cell door. No knock, no sound, just paper magically appearing, the edge catching the light. I opened it. In small, precise handwriting, "You did a good thing today." I looked at it for a long time. Rose, who speaks with the emotion of a very well-written text message. Rose, about whom my suspicion was turning into certainty. She was the softest-hearted person in this whole prison, and if I ever told her that, she would explode. I put the paper on my shelf, next to Luna's poem. Then through the wall, Diamond's voice came like a storm. "Kevin." "Yes, Diamond. Everyone is talking about you. Blocks A, B, C, Diamond, Brenda. Someone's going to come." "What? Why?" "Your nickname. The old one is dead. Do you know what they're calling you now?" Her voice dropped to a whisper that still cut through concrete walls. "The gentleman." I thought about it. "That's worse," I said. "That's much worse." "It's iconic," she said. "Just own it." I looked at my shelf. That poem, that note, Diamond, and Roxy, what she did was also brave. Walking up to someone and saying something kind is actually much harder than people think. A long pause, the longest pause in Diamond's history. "I'll tell her," Diamond said, very quietly and sincerely. Silence. Then, "Kevin." "Yes, she's crying." Diamond, pull UPS and crying at the same time. I've never seen that before. That's incredible. I hid my face in my hands and laughed for 30 seconds, the sound bouncing off the bright walls. "Good night, Diamond. It's the middle of the afternoon. I need some peace." "Okay, gentlemen. Don't call me that." "Good night, gentlemen." I leaned back on my cot, stared at the ceiling, where the light was beginning to soften into evening. 8 months. I had been thinking of these 8 months as a wall. A solid, flat, unmovable wall between me and my normal life. But today it felt, I don't know, maybe it's not a wall. Maybe it's a very long, very strange, sometimes very beautiful, and definitely very chaotic chapter. And only 4 days have passed. I closed my eyes. Somewhere far in the block, I could hear Roxy still doing pull UPS. Maybe still crying. I smiled at the ceiling. "Good night, Block D." I wasn't talking to anyone, just the air. But somewhere far away, Diamond heard it. "Night, gentlemen." I laughed and pulled my blanket up to my chin. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. For the first time since I got here, lying in the dark, I listened to the block breathing. On the right, Diamond's deep sleep sounds, not quite snores, but something. On the left, Rose's total silence, which somehow felt louder than snoring. And I realized I wasn't afraid of today. For days ago, when I woke up, my first thought was, I want to go home. This morning, my first thought was, will Linda make eggs or oatmeal today? Then I thought, I wonder if Veronica has already reached the laundry room. Then I deliberately stopped thinking that second thing and went back to eggs. Eggs are good. Eggs are safe. The alarm rang. Diamond fell off her bed with a thud. I'm up. Then, good morning, gentlemen. Her voice was still 40% asleep. Good morning, Diamond. Did you sleep? Yes. First time. First time? Really? Must be that Kier. I smiled at the ceiling. Yeah, must be. At breakfast, Linda gave me 4 eggs. I tried to explain that 2 eggs are enough for 1 person. She looked at me like I had cursed in her native language and added a 5th egg. The cafeteria was so bright it almost hurt, every surface clean and glowing. I sat with Diamond, Priya, and Casey. Our corner of the table had become our corner without any formal announcement. Priya watched me eat like a scientist watching a successful experiment. So, feeling better today? She asked. I slept. Good. You were getting dark circles. I was about to say something. Priya, you can always say something. I didn't want to bother you. Dark circles don't bother me. I also noticed you're not finishing your dinner. I am finishing it. The last 3 bites. You always leave the last 3 bites. I just stared at her. You're tracking my last 3 bites. I'm very observant, she said simply, and added more toast to my tray. Diamond watched with her chin in her hands. You've got a new mother, she told me. Congratulations. I already have a mother. Now you have 2. Lucky you. I ate my toast in silence. Then it happened. Started with Luna. She was humming, very softly to herself, a beautiful tune. Without thinking, I started humming along. Just a quiet harmony. Luna stopped, looked at me. I stopped too. Sorry, I said. That tune was really nice. You harmonized, she said, as if I had done something great. It was just a little harmony. This time she said it to Diamond. He harmonized. Diamond sat up straight. Kevin, do you sing? No. I mean, I just hummed a little. Exactly, Diamond said. Sing something. I'm not singing in the cafeteria. Just that same tune, Luna said. Please. And when Luna says please, she says it with her whole face. There was no escape. I hummed 4 lines. Very quietly. The whole cafeteria went silent. Then a woman from Block B started tapping rhythm on her table. Someone else joined in. Luna began to sing, this time at full voice. And she was really good. Her voice filled the bright room like light itself. Diamond stood up and started rapping to the same tune about prison food and Officer Brenda. It was hilarious. The whole cafeteria came alive. Clapping, rapping, someone making music with spoons and cups. Even Linda behind the counter was swaying, her shadow dancing on the gleaming tiles. I sat in the middle watching what they had built from my 4 quiet lines. Then Officer Brenda walked into the cafeteria. She stopped, looked at the crowd of 50 people, then looked at me. I put my hands up. I only hummed 4 lines. She turned and walked back out. As the door closed, I heard a faint sound. Brenda was laughing. Soon after, Z was standing at the door of the common room with her clipboard and her natural disaster face. The room behind her was filled with soft, clear light. There's a talent show on Friday. You're in charge of it. Z, I just hummed. Block A has given 4 names. Block C has given 3. Block B has a group that's been waiting for months. This isn't my fault. You hummed, she said, tapping her pen. Then she looked at me. Kevin. It was the first time she had called me Kevin. Not the anomaly or the subject, just Kevin. I realized I had been unconsciously waiting for that. Are you performing? She asked carefully. No intention at all. She wrote something on her clipboard. What did you write? Nothing. Friday, 7 p.m. Don't be late. She turned to leave. Z, did you put your own name down? A long pause. That's not necessary information, she said. Then she walked away stiffly, as if she had definitely put her name down, the light catching the back of her clipboard. I was smiling. Something had changed with Z. She was still terrifying, but she didn't look at me like an experiment anymore. Boom was waiting for me outside the kitchen, arms crossed. The corridor was a tunnel of brightness. Cook off, she said. What? You and me. Kitchen. Now. Priya had told her I could cook. I made a mental note to talk to Priya about what she tells people. I only know basic things. What's your best dish? She decided she would make her grandmother's jerk chicken. I would make my best thing. Stir fry. Judges. Casey, Rose, and Linda. What's the bet? Asked. If I win, Boom said, you stop leaving the last 3 bites of dinner. Priya gets worried. I stared at her. Everyone knows. Kevin, Priya announces it to the world. And if I win? Asked. She said quietly, then I'll admit that the cake thing wasn't your fault. You still think it was my fault? It was a typing mistake. Gerald Higgins ate 2 slices. So that's Gerald's fault? He's 71 years old. Kevin. She had a point about Gerald. Fine, I said. Cook off. Deal. We cooked. The kitchen was a symphony of steam and sunlight. Casey ate both dishes and pointed at me. Rose ate both and said, Kevin. Linda ate both and said, both. Linda, you have to pick one. I picked both. Boom and I looked at each other. That means, Boom said, almost smiling, the cake thing was maybe only 70% your fault. I'll take 70%, I said. While cleaning up, Boom said without looking at me, you're not a government spy. I checked. Gerald Higgins gave an interview on local news. He said it was the best cake of his life. He's trying to find the bakery sorry to order another one. I held my head. Gerald, what a strange world. But I was smiling. That afternoon in the yard, peace. I sat on a bench in the corner, reading my book. First time in 5 days that I had sat quietly without a spectacle. The sun was warm and kind, the sky an impossible blue. Then I felt someone sit on the other end of the bench. I looked up. Veronica. She had a book too. She didn't look at me. I went back to my book. 2 people. 1 bench. Both reading. Total silence. The light made everything look like a painting. I kept waiting for her to throw a taunt or assert dominance. Nothing. Just both of us reading, the pages turning softly. After a while, I realized Veronica hadn't turned a single page. I kept that observation to myself. A bird landed nearby, then flew away into the bright sky. 1 minute later, still looking at her book, Veronica said, "That talent show is going to be a huge disaster." "Probably," I said. "Someone will cry. At least Luna." "Definitely Luna. Luna cries at good things too." I looked at her. She was still looking at her book, but the sunlight was in her hair. "She's not fragile," Veronica said. "People think she's fragile. She's not. She just feels things very deeply." Veronica was quiet for a while. "Yeah," she said, as if the word surprised her. A strange peace. No more hostility. Just 2 people sitting together in silence, the world around them so bright it could break your heart. Then she stood up. "Laundry duty tomorrow. 7 a.m. Don't be late, Kevin." She had called me Kevin. I watched her walk away across the sunlit yard. I was almost asleep when Rose's voice came through the warm darkness. "Kevin, you should perform." "Rose, you don't need anyone's permission. Your humming made 50 people forget their breakfast and start moving. That doesn't happen from just 4 lines. It happens from what's behind those 4 lines." "Since when do you care about music?" I asked. A long pause. Then, "You're tolerable." From Rose's mouth, that was a standing ovation. "Good night, Rose." From the right, "Diamond, she really loves you, you know?" "Diamond." "Good night, everyone," Rose said sharply. Diamond giggled. I laughed into my pillow, the sound muffled and happy. A typing mistake and a $5 toll booth had brought me here. But for the second night in a row, I felt like I was in the right place.